Good morning. This is Rosemary, and this is the Lightwalker's Path. It's a place for enlightening conversation and fascinating guests, like today's guest, Tony Lamata, somatic healer, past pattern breaker, someone that teaches you self-trust and has developed a I'm getting tongue-tied, a, a six plan to open up yourself to a deep state of awareness. But I don't know what's happening with my mouth today. Oh my goodness. So, welcome, Tony. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks a lot.
Yes. And after I just jumbled up that, I would like you to help me unravel what I just said. So, you
Well, I call it six pillars
take,
of,
there you go.
yeah, the six pillars to lead people to their inner compass is
I
the
love
word.
that. I think my brain just glitched. I don't know. Maybe the snow froze me. That's beautiful. So I was really interested in your journey because you come from a background of religious life. When I thought that was pretty interesting, how you transformed yourself through your own experiences and what you went through. So would you mind talking about a little bit of that with me?
Not at all. I love sharing. There was a time, and it was 16 years, where everything, and I mean everything, was dictated by external authority. Not
Okay.
suggested, not recommended, actually dictated. And
Wow.
16 years in a convent under a vow of obedience,
Oh,
and every instinct, every desire you had, any knowing, you had to check at the door. And if you
oh,
said you had a new idea, it was bring it to someone wiser. If
oh
you
no.
felt guidance, you really couldn't trust yourself. You were the most untrustworthy.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
was always about surrendering your will and waiting for
Yes,
direction.
yes.
And so I silenced myself over and over until yeah, I lost the ability to hear my own voice. And I often say to people, maybe that sounds extreme, but I think that so many people take vows, maybe not of obedience, not, formally, but they make promises kind of like, well, I guess unconsciously,
Yeah,
where they promise they'll live like their family wants them to. So
yes.
sometimes in corporations to a company, or very often people lose their voice in a relationship.
Yeah.
Particularly women often lose their voice and become what their
What sounds
master wants.
safer, right? What sounds
Yeah,
safer?
and some people get into perfectionism or people pleasing. There's just lots of
Mhm.
ways that people have kind of made a commitment and lose their own inner knowing.
I
And
love
it's
that. I love that you're coming to that point because what I was thinking of, so many women are trained to be pleasing or to dummy down who we are as a person or not to step into your power. And I think the younger generation of women are more fearless, I believe, with at least with speaking the truth. Maybe back in the 60s, we have all those movers and shakers of the 60s that were pretty crazy, awesome women that have changed things. But then it went back, and now hopefully it's going forward. So I'm gonna question you. Why did you go into religious study at that point? Was there something that you felt called, or you felt you had to do it, or was it family? What got you there?
interesting question because I've often looked at that, like, why did I enter? And I think part of it at the time, from the time I was maybe 5 years old, I had a spiritual awakening kind of
Yeah,
life. And
yeah.
and I wanted to be a priest. And in the Catholic Church, that wasn't allowed. So from the
Oh,
higher point of view, I felt a calling, and that was what a woman could do. So I entered a convent.
I see.
When I look back on it, I had a family where I come from an Italian background from New York. And, that we were told that when men speak and say jump, you ask how high on the way up.
Mm,
And so I learned that, I didn't want that. I knew there was something
yeah.
different. So I think that I was escaping as well as going
Yes.
towards something,
I see. It's funny. I'm Italian also from New Jersey. And thank God, my father was amazing, an amazing man. My mother actually ran the family, we always say, but I come from a lot of strong women. Me, I kind of developed some people-pleasing stuff that I have to beat down with a stick sometimes because it's ingrained in me to not cause a fuss. And I think we spend so much of our adult life unlearning those patterns that we have thought brought us to where we are, but they don't serve us. And I think a lot of people go through that point at different times in their life. I, like you, also had a very strong calling early, and I knew God was always there for me. So thank goodness, I still have this really strong faith inside me that always carried me through. But I also understood that when you're connected with God, it doesn't mean that you have to hide yourself. Like my grandma always said, shine that light from under the bushel, from the Bible. So that was, thank goodness for that.
Well, Rosemary, it's interesting because one of the things that I teach is the Enneagram. Are you familiar
Oh,
with the
yeah,
Enneagram?
I studied it a couple years ago with a nun, but I didn't know a lot about it. But that was really interesting. So talk about that.
Well, it's fascinating because the Enneagram is both a personality,
Yes.
I don't know, just to help you see what your personality is, but it's so much more of a spiritual awakening. And
Hmm.
I say that because we all come into this world in perfection.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes.
comes from the divine
Little
and we have
beautiful
all the
soul.
qualities. And
Yeah.
then something happens in our childhood, usually in the first 5 years,
Hmm.
excuse me,
Especially.
and we feel like we're
Yeah.
losing that connection, and
Yeah.
so we develop our ego, and the ego takes on, and according to the Enneagram, and the Enneagram comes from the early Greeks, and I mean it's ancient, it's not something that's just modern today, and they teach us that we've developed in 9 different ways. And
Hmm.
I like to think of each of those 9 ways as a different vow. For
Hmm.
example, people pleasing is often someone who's taking care of everybody else's needs before
There
their
you
own.
go. That's me.
And that's an Enneagram 2. And then
Hmm.
there are people who have to be perfect. If they don't do it right, they're
Hmm.
an Enneagram 1. And then there are people who, how successful they are and how good they look and how they perform is more important than who they are. I mean, I don't need to go through all 9, but
Very
you get the
interesting.
idea that every
Yeah.
single person kind of like found looking for their way back to their essence.
Love
But it
that.
takes
Yeah.
time to recognize. When we start to recognize, oh my glory, I have this pattern. And when
Hmm.
we see the pattern, then rather than like fix it or change it, we can remind ourselves who we really are. Because every personality also has an essence quality and a
Hmm.
quality of the divine. And so mine is joy. I love it. My gift is to bring joy to the world and
Hmm.
freedom. And it's got its downfalls, but it has its absolutely, wonderful. And yours, if you are an Enneagram 2, it would be bringing love to the world, really
Exactly.
unconditional love.
I was going to tell you that is exactly my mission is loving the unlovable. Trying to bring that feeling of love and heart energy out to people so they know you're loved because not everybody was lucky to have parents that loved them or that felt secured. So yeah, that's kind of been my thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
Mhm.
we each have a different, and one of the things that was kind of shocking to me, but also it was a wake-up call, was to recognize that I only see 1/9. I'm only seeing through my own lens. So what
Yeah.
I think people need may be what I need, and I need
Yeah.
to be much more open. It has opened a whole lot of other doorways to look at, to recognize, that I'm at peace, but I'm one piece and we need one another. So
Yeah.
it's been profound to
Yeah.
really.
It's so interesting that you said that because the other day I had someone tell me that sometimes, like with me, I'm an honest person. So when you're an honest person, you see everybody with integrity, and not everybody has integrity. And it's sometimes I get blindsided because although I'm really good reading people, sometimes we read them through the lens of who we are, not who they are. And we're dumbfounded, like, how could that be when, I wouldn't do that. And it just blows my mind sometimes when I remind myself of that in myself, that lesson, that truth.
And mine is that I see everything as positive.
Me
So
too.
I
Me too.
don't see,
Yeah.
which is wonderful, but I don't see the negative. And
Right.
then it blindsides me sometimes, and
Yeah.
I've got to be very careful in the same way.
I've
And
done that.
I hang out with people who see the negatives so that I can learn from them.
Yes. It's the same way. And I don't know if it's because, like, for me, I want to always be maintain a positive energy in the world. And if I step into maybe the reality of the darkness that some other people are seeing, then I can't be that light for other people because it'll pull me down. So I think part of it for me is the protection of always walking in that light because I don't want to be pulled the other way. And I think that's always a challenge for people that are healers and helpers. Always want to be
Absolutely. And
positive. Yeah.
the light that's in us. I think that's one of the things that probably you and I have in common is to help people recognize their light because so many people, it's so easy for them to see what's wrong with them. People
Yes.
are always talking, I'm working on this. And I'm like, stop
Yeah.
working on yourself.
Just be. Be.
Start see who you really are. And who
Yeah.
you are is so much better, so much more. And that's why I really focus on helping people see their inner compass, because the inner compass is the strength and the peace and the
Yes.
love. And when
Yeah.
people can see that, I love working with people who come to me with fear and doubt, and they're seeing the negatives and the what ifs,
Hmm.
and I really help them through a process. It's not something that
Hmm.
happens overnight, but to really start saying, wait a minute, you have within you that spark of the divine,
Hmm.
and I'll
Hmm.
teach you ways you can get in touch with that so you can then be light as well. It's
I love that. And I think a lot of people have, I believe it's almost like a soul sickness or a hole they're trying to fill with buying things, doing things, busyness, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, it's like a soul sickness that has to be filled back with that spark of the divine in order to remember who they are. And I do believe we come in with soul lessons that's why we're here on earth. And I believe, our job here on earth is to harness as much light as we can so when we die, we bring it over back to God as a gift to become all the great all that is. We bring our gift back to God when we go. That's how
Yeah,
I
well,
see
we
it.
are certainly in touch here. That's
Yeah.
exactly. I think that, and again, the Enneagram is just one way of seeing that filter is that we
Yeah.
all come with different gifts and with different
Yeah.
challenges. And so, when you understand them, though, you become aware. One of the things I tell people is you don't have to work on it. You simply need to be aware. And when you
Mhm.
start noticing, there I go again, there I
Yeah.
go again,
Yeah.
you change. You change simply by, I think in the 12 steps, they talk observation, awareness,
Yeah.
acceptance, and then change. And
Yeah.
so simply, I teach people just be aware. I have
Yeah.
a teacher, and her name's Sonia Choquette. Have you
Oh,
ever
Sonia.
heard?
Yeah. Yeah. We have our music. Yes.
Okay, her work is so beautiful, and she talks about we all have within us a spirit and a barking dog. I love
Yeah.
it.
The
And
ego,
so,
right?
that
Yeah.
dog that's bar, and she invites people to name both of those. And I'll say
Oh,
that to your audience now.
I
Name
love
your
that.
spirit, name your barking dog. And so when you're hearing those voices, that are saying you're wrong, you've got to fix this, you got to
Hmm.
do this, that's your barking dog. And say, be
Yes.
quiet, I'll feed you later. But my
Yeah.
spirit is in charge here.
I
So
love that. Yeah. It's like the tail wagging the dog, I always say.
yeah.
Like the ego is the tail wagging the dog, and it'll fool you, just like fear can fool you. And our true compass, like you're saying, that North Star is our connection. So that's awesome. So when someone does an Enneagram thing, do you do it like with questioning? Is there qualities they tell you that you can identify? Excuse me, or is there another process where you can identify their Enneagram? Or is it
You know,
archetypes?
I very often tell people, I won't tell you who you are. You
Hmm.
can only know. So I don't do anything I teach people the different aspects.
Okay.
And in listening, many people get it right away and they can, like you
Hmm.
just did, and yeah, I know what my type is. But there are people who take some of the teachers of the Enneagram said they took years just trying to figure out which type they were. And that process is so powerful. It's a process of observing yourself. So I don't even, there are lots of tests you can take, and I don't recommend that people take a test
Okay.
until they really come to the point of like recognizing it in themselves. And so there are ways that, I teach some
Yeah.
classes, they can study it, but just observing and noticing, each of the patterns. And we all have all of them. The other thing that I do teach is that, we're the divine is in everything. So
Hmm.
there's no missing. You've got all nine types within you, but you
Hmm.
lead with one of the types.
That's
So
right.
it can be confusing when people first try to learn because, like, yeah, I see that in myself, I see that. And so,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I mostly teach Enneagram sixes and nines because they're the people who forget themselves most
Mm.
and who are looking outside. However, all of us have that in us. And the reason I even started doing that was because I recognized my own my own experience of the vow of obedience and how I had given up,
Mm.
completely given up what I was hearing, and shut down that entire intuitive part of myself. And
Wow.
it was years of learning and studying and to discover that again. And it was only recently and in the last couple of years where I started saying, oh my glory, all of my studies have been around finding my own inner voice. Maybe that's what I need to teach.
I love that. I do love that. And I always say, the word intuition and soul actually comes from God. So the way I look at it is God gave us this gorgeous intuition inside of us, which is something that leads us to truth. And without it, we're denying God. So I always thought of like that intuition is the beautiful part of our soul that guides us, kind of like that, like, the breadcrumb along the trail. So, yeah, I totally believe. I was thinking I recently came across something called human design, which I thought was quite interesting because it reminded me of when I learned a little bit about enneagrams years ago. And it's just another way to identify maybe qualities, positive and negative, that we hold within us that, and I don't even say negative because I think each quality has a purpose, but things that are in us that kind of guide our personality one way or another. And I thought that was an interesting kind of connection between the two.
Oh, there's lots of connections with that and with, I mean, many of the personality tests, for example, I taught Myers-Briggs for years.
Myers-Briggs, yes.
But most of them are psychological tests only. And
Yeah.
the Enneagram just has a lot more richness to it and a more spiritual dimensions. I mean, there's a whole
Mhm.
thing on what we call the instincts. There are what they call your arrows and where you go under stress. And, there's more that you can learn when you're
Yeah.
studying the whole thing. I actually traveled the world teaching Myers-Briggs for years, and I
Ah,
gave it up when I learned the Enneagram. Not initially. When I first
yeah.
learned the Enneagram, I just assumed, oh, this is another personality test. I don't
Yes.
need another one. And then years later, when I was reintroduced to it and saw the depth of it, I then gave up Myers-Briggs. I didn't give it up
Uh,
completely, but it's, I recognize that might tell me psychologically, but the Enneagram has helped spiritually so much more. And some of the other studies that I've done too, I do some journaling work, and I'm
mhm.
currently teaching a course on that, where help people to see how your life actually is teaching you what it wants.
That's
I
right.
studied with a man named Ira Progoff in the
Okay.
intensive journal,
Uh-huh.
and his question is, what does your life wish to become? And
Okay.
I
That's
love that.
positive. Yes. Yes. I do also like journaling. And when I started channeling angels years ago, in 93. I always started with prayer and then I would ask a question. What do you want me to know? God, what do you want me to know? And that's when Uriel stepped in and told me. I'm like, whoa. But yeah, it's amazing how we have this automatic connection and we don't even realize it's always there whispering to us. And we just have to find it again and go forward. I think that, you're saying the Myers-Briggs, excuse me, as a school teacher, a former school teacher, we also use this other form where it kind of told you personality types or learning styles. But it's really neat when all this stuff weaves together and you start seeing all the similarities of, well, this and this and this all lead you to the same answer, but they're just pieces of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Did
Yeah.
you, when you were speaking just now, did you say Ariel came in?
Uriel,
Uriel.
Uriel,
Okay.
Uriel. I have had contact with Ariel as well, but Uriel is the one that kicks you in the butt and puts you on your path. And that one, I just sat up and what I did was I took a workshop and I came home and I prayed and I said, God, there's something I'm missing. I'm getting the dreams of teaching adults. I'm teaching kids. What do you want me to do? And with that, I was told to sit down and say a prayer, and I did. And then all of a sudden, I felt the searing heat run through my head down to the bottom of my feet, and I felt like somebody was behind me, but I knew I wasn't afraid. And I was basically told, put your hands on the keyboard, I will tell you. And I started getting really slow words, and I got my first angel message from Uriel, and I didn't understand it. At first, there was stuff in there I didn't quite get. And don't you know, like a week later, I go to a workshop and there was a minister there. Didn't know he's a minister. I was told to put this angel communication in my pocketbook. And when I met the person I needed to give it to, give it to the person. And I was guided to this man who turned out to be a minister. And he was telling me about, the war between the light and the darkness and how I was called to take this path if that's what I had courage to do. And all this other stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh. So of course I kept it quiet for a while, for 3 years. I just kept doing what I was doing but he guided me. Say a prayer. Don't pray to angels, pray to God and ask for angel guidance as needed. And trust your inner light. And that was kind of it. So I've been doing that
That's
ever
what
since.
It is wonderful. One of the pillars that I teach, the 6 pillars, one of them is learning to listen to your spirit guides and angels. And
Ah,
so, because many people are kind of been taught that's taboo. I mean,
yeah.
many of the churches are teaching, don't go
Yes.
near any of that.
Yes.
And I work with people who are coming through that and deconstructing their old beliefs and saying, you
Yeah.
know, make it fun. I also say to them, don't take this so seriously. Make
Mm,
it fun. And I teach them about joy guides. I don't know if you've
love
heard
that.
all the distinctions,
Sounds very Buddha. Yeah.
like let's look for fun and start looking during the day when you're being led to smile and laugh. And that's
Mm,
your joy guide. And like, take a look at when you're missing something. The runner will go out and find it for you. And
yes. St.
and I'm
Anthony.
finding they love it. And people
Yeah.
are smiling and saying, "Oh, this isn't so bad," and they may not get direct messages right away. And I also say, like the message may come on a billboard while you're driving down the street
Absolutely.
or
Oh, I got a good one for you, Tony. So after my mom and dad passed, I was riding down the highway and I said a prayer and I said, God, I'm really missing my parents. Can you give me a sign? And a big truck goes by. The first one said, God delivers. And then the second one was Rose and Sam on the side. Those are my parents' names. And I'm
wow.
like, that couldn't have been more clear. I had other things like I was missing my father. And I went to my office, and I have an office, behind my house, and a separate room. No one's in there except for me. And I have a sign-in booklet. And on top of the booklet, there was a nickel. And my father and I always had this joke when I was really young. He goes, do you want this dirty nickel or this big shiny penny? How about we trade? And he'd laugh. And there was the nickel on the book. And I like, and it was from dad. But I've always had these very unusual things happen to me. So I follow those signs. I follow them.
Happens all the time. And
Yeah.
most of the time people miss it. They're
Hmm.
not aware. And so the whole training is all about awareness,
Yeah.
aware of your own traits, but aware of what's happening, aware
Yes.
of the patterns in your life and what's
Yes.
the gift here, what's it trying to show you. And
Hmm.
there's a saying that I don't know where I picked it up from. I can't give it credit, but I use it now as my own, is that life isn't happening to us. It's
Happening
happening for
for
us.
us. Yeah.
And
I have that one. I do love that one as well. And that's why I tell people when you go through a problem, don't consider it as a problem, but it's a teaching lesson that your soul is being refined and what are you learning from it? So as long as you get the lesson out of it, you don't get stuck. But as soon as you get stuck in why me, then the lesson's gone until you recognize it.
it's true. And I
Yeah.
will go even further and call it a gift.
A
Like
gift. Yeah.
rather than the lesson sounds, especially people
Yeah.
who've had a hard time in school,
Yeah.
but I don't want any more lessons. But where is the gift? I give you an example. I recently fell about 2 months ago and broke my ankle in
Oh, goodness.
in four places, Rosemary. It's like
Mm.
they said there are four places you could break an ankle, and you did all
Oh,
four.
oh,
But it
goodness.
was interesting because as I was lying on the floor in utter pain, I said, there's a gift here. I need to see it. I had to laugh at myself. I was screaming, crying
Yeah.
in pain.
Oh,
And at the same, so I laughed and said, maybe you really do believe this stuff. And I've been looking at it and I'm beginning, sometimes you don't see it right away. I'm seeing some of the lessons and part of it was I found out who my really close friends were and who I could trust and who I
yes,
could depend on. It's been
yes.
amazing. And also the people that I thought were there who just weren't there. And
Uh,
not, not to blame anybody. It was just an eye opener
yeah,
and an opportunity and also an opportunity to ask for what I need, which has
yes.
been
Probably not
challenging.
able to do, right? I know us as, when you are used to being a number two, as you say, yeah, we don't ask for help. It's like we do it, we just don't complain, keep moving forward, and then eventually starts wearing on us because sometimes you need help, right? Sometimes you need that shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
just someone to do my laundry because I
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
that
Or,
too.
there were simple things that I
Yeah.
wasn't able to do and I was able to and really able. I have been good many years ago when I was still in the Catholic Church and practicing
Yes.
Lent. I
Yes.
made a practice of saying yes to everyone who offered anything. But let me tell you, it was the hardest 40 days of my life
I
because
bet.
people were constantly offering to do things and I was saying, oh no, I can handle it, no way, no. And so I learned how to accept help and it's just
Yeah.
been an amazing. And that's the other piece of guidance, the guidance
Yeah.
does come from within, but we're not alone. I
No.
remember the Jesuit teaching of discernment. You need to not ask people, what should I do, but help being discerned, make sure you're really seeing the truth and you're not
Yes.
just fooling yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's a piece of the inner compass is not
Yeah.
I'm alone here and what I think is the right thing. I mean, we know the difference and
We
people
do.
can and I have a thing, you said something before about truth, and I have this practice that if I say something and people do not agree, I have not come to truth, even though I think it's true. Because if
Okay.
there are people that are not agreeing, when you come to truth, everybody says, "Oh yeah, that's right." It's like,
Mhm.
so there's something I'm missing. And that has been such a helpful practice. If somebody
Hmm.
disagrees, not to like say they're right and I'm wrong, but to say, I wonder what I'm missing here.
Yeah.
Because if I were speaking total truth, when I say to people, you create in your life what you think about, no one
Hmm.
has ever argued that. It's a truth. It's just,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
experience it all the time, so people don't argue it. But if I say something, and I can't think of anything right now that I think I believe, but everybody else might not believe, they question it. And so it's an
Hmm.
opportunity. It's really to me, discernment is such a big part of knowing our inner compass and not listening to other people's opinions, but recognizing that when you're in truth, everybody feels peace, calm, collection. It's really amazing.
It's an interesting way to look at it. What I look at it is sometimes the truth for one person's life may be a different view of someone else's life. So for instance, I have learned to be open-hearted because that's my truth of how I walk through life. Someone else's experience might have taught them not to trust people because they had bad childhood experiences. So even though the truth is to be open-hearted, someone who's been in a different scenario is living a different version of what the truth would be for them. And that, the basic core of truth is love everyone, right? But not
Mhm.
everybody is ready or open enough to do that. And I think that's where perception colors the core truths, the universal truths of love thy neighbor, and all that.
Well, and that helps us when we recognize that, it helps us to be open and accepting that everybody's going to see things differently,
Absolutely.
and that you're not right and wrong.
Yeah, it's
There's
just
just
a
a
perception.
different perception.
Different
Exactly.
perception. That's awesome. I just wanted to come back to something about the angels and guides. One of the things that I caution, like my clients, and I do teach angel communication, like you do. One of the things I always caution them about is be really careful the energy that you let in. So, like, don't sit in a graveyard and talk to dead people. Like, you got to know what you're doing. Like, just be careful and always surround yourself with either prayer, intention, light, something that sets intention so that whatever you bring in is aligned with highest good, with God, and with truth. People sometimes will just like dabble in different things and not really have that understanding that we are a vessel and that be careful with what you allow in this vessel. So I'm sure you do something like that, some sort of practice that's
Absolutely.
saying
And it's yeah, I probably don't teach the depth of angel communication that you do. I mean, I just help people like become aware that there's so much guidance around
there is.
us and that we could
There
get
is.
guidance in everything, in every aspect. And to look for just because someone has passed doesn't mean that they're now enlightened and they
Right,
can help you. So
right.
that's another thing because people want to communicate with someone that's gone, and well, that's interesting, but you've got to listen to where is it coming from,
Yes,
and
yes,
to trust that the divine speaks in us and through us.
that's
And
right.
we know in our bodies, I mean, there's a whole somatic
Hmm.
real connection to that. Is like whenever people are making decisions and they don't know what to do, I
Go to
just
the
say,
body.
how does your body feel about it?
I
And
love that.
it
That's what
never
I teach
lies. The
too.
body never
Yeah, yeah,
lies. So you have a stomach ache and a headache. Well, maybe you're not on to what's really happening here.
yes,
When you come to this is what I need to be doing, like everything is peaceful. I had a client recently who was looking to move and he had several other decisions. And I asked him, just when you go to make those decisions, how does it feel? And he said,
yeah.
oh,
Where
it
do you
feels
feel
good.
it?
And just feel,
Hmm.
when your body is calm and at peace, that's a sign. It's so
Yeah,
simple. It's very simple, but it's not common. Many
not as
people have
common.
no idea how to read themselves.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm developing a certain talk, and I'm doing this through the Speaker Lab. But my whole thing is teaching people exactly what you said, their body awareness. Because when I teach my healers, I say sit in your body, and where does that energy sit? If it's sitting in the heart area, something's making you sad. If it's sitting in the stomach, you're overthinking and you're not coming to resolution. So there's different areas of your body energetically that hold the energy of yes, I should, no, I shouldn't, or just stay put till you figure it out. But the body is amazing. That's really the first line of our rudimentary system of intuition is your body awareness. And that's what a lot of us have lost through this crazy life that we have running forward, doing this, doing that, right?
Well, the initial practice that I teach for the inner compass is to three-centered awareness, to
I love
become
that.
aware.
Yeah.
And that I was taught a 7-minute meditation that I
Okay.
teach everybody else. And it's spend 2 minutes just noticing your breath and sensation and just
Hmm.
becoming conscious of the now. And
Hmm.
the now only happens in our body. Our
Yeah.
heart and our head go all over the place, but our
Yeah.
body knows the now. And
Yeah.
so then spend 2 minutes in the heart and see what you're appreciating, what you're
Hmm.
feeling. And then 2 minutes in the head, not in the chatter, but in the quiet that's giving you possibility and vision and awareness. And then to recognize that the breath is going through all three all at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
it's a
love that.
it's a
Yeah.
practice that really helps people get in touch with, the three centers, and then you can become much more aware, like which center is actually speaking right now.
Yeah.
Many people have no clue what you mean when you talk
They're
about
like, I'm
that,
up
but
here. I'm up here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of my clients, I teach them to move from head center into heart awareness too. And, just visualizing and feeling through heart center. And then ask your heart, what do you want? What do you need? And people will get a completely different answer or a completely different direction once they do that. So that's so interesting. So you have, okay, I see you have, other things that you do. So you've done speaking, you present. What are some of the other things you do? You work with your clients, you work virtually and in person, or just virtually at this point?
At this point in my life, I work only virtually.
Okay.
And it's because even though I don't look it, I am 80 years old.
Oh,
So
God bless you. You don't look it, no.
I've got a lot of wisdom behind me and
Yeah.
and a little less oomph. So I work a lot virtually. I work with people all over the world, and
Uh-huh.
it doesn't matter when you're virtual, it doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
also speaking virtually now. I used to be on platforms, on stages all
Love
over,
that.
and was a
Yes.
professional speaker for a number of years, and I'm now taking it on more and more online. So
Love
it's
that.
been wonderful.
Yes.
In writing, I've written several books as well. So, but,
Okay. Okay.
but
Beautiful.
I prefer the speaking to the writing. The writing was a labor, and it took a while. And
Does take
people keep
time.
saying to me, "You need to write another book," and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So are your books on Amazon?
They're all on Amazon. And actually, if you look up my name on Amazon, you'll find all of them.
I'll have
But
to
I
look.
have two in particular that, as long as you're giving me the
Of
opportunity,
course. Of
I'll
course.
talk about. One is called What You Really Want Wants You.
Okay.
And what that is I had a question in my mind about goal setting. Everywhere I
Hmm.
went, people were talking about setting goals and figuring out what you want. And I actually began by calling the book Stop Setting Goals.
Yeah.
And my intention was that when you set a goal, it's like what you think is possible. And usually you
Right.
limit yourself. But what I do in this book is talk about the 12 qualities of God and say,
Oh,
what
interesting.
if each year or each month you choose a quality and just allow yourself to focus on that? So,
Hmm.
for example, one month I focused on beauty. I don't know why, it just showed up, it's like, and I was at that time running a church, and I went to this woman's home. She played the crystal bowls, and she
Hmm.
was going to play for my church. So she asked me to come over and check out what she was going to do. And I went to her home and I said, "Forget the bowls. I want to buy your house."
Ah,
And I mean, it was just spontaneous. And she
ah,
looked at me and said, "I want to sell it."
ah,
And I actually was not looking to buy a house. I
uh-huh.
bought her house. Long story, I won't go into all the details, but the minute people walked into that place, it was on a creek, but it was
Hmm.
so pretty. And everyone who walked in my home said to me, "It's so beautiful here."
Oh,
And
there
I
you
have
go.
to laugh because,
Focus on
if
beauty.
I had thought about what beauty meant, it certainly didn't feel
Yeah.
like go buy a home,
Yeah.
So it's been very interesting. So I teach people to set the intention on a quality and
Hmm.
just look to experience that quality. And
Hmm.
people have had some profound experiences doing
That's
that.
that's a
So,
great idea. That's a great. I have to look that up. Yeah, I've got
so
my books on Amazon too, and it's like when I find a good read, like that's powerful. That's
yeah, I
beautiful.
think you might enjoy that. The other one was for a while, I still teach it, but it's not my main focus anymore. It was called Embracing the Aging Process.
Okay.
Obviously, something I've had to do for myself. And
Hmm.
I began teaching people what the myths about aging are. We have so
Hmm.
many myths of what we
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah.
and what's going to happen, and
Yes.
so I teach the myths and the beliefs, and then I teach people about life review and look at what
Oh
your life's
yeah.
trying to teach you, and then the spirituality. One of the major things, people feel like they're giving something up, and I say to them, like, I'm no longer dancing. I used to be a dancer. I loved to dance
Oh.
and did ballroom dancing and tap and ballet as a
Mhm.
child. But now I use dance as my metaphor of relationship with the divine. And
Love that.
so I have a statue of dancers right on my
Uh-huh.
altar. And you just change the
You,
way you're
yeah.
looking at something. Anyway, so
Beautiful. Beautiful.
embracing, and then obviously embracing death and embracing our
Yeah.
final days, and
Mhm.
ask people. I have people write what they want said about them at their
Yes. Like
funeral,
an
and
epitaph. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's an amazing. That's my
Beautiful.
latest book, but
Beautiful. I hope
it's
people look it up for you, Tony. That's great. So they can reach you at tonylamada.com. And I
correct.
hope people do look you up. So we're coming on the end of the show. So you've been a fascinating guest and person, and I love what you do. So thank you for sharing your light. And please look up my shows as well for workshops, sessions, and books. And look up Tony Lamada and her books and her beautiful services. It's been a pleasure, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Delightful.
Yeah.